So good morning, listeners, and welcome to C&SI Inspirations on this, the 2nd of November. It's the Feast of All Souls. My name is John Keeley, and help me again to present this podcast, Shane Ambrose. How are you, Shane?
I'm not too bad, John. How are we keeping?
You're sounding good, considering you're a few miles away from here.
To be precise, I think I am something like 8,650 kilometers away from you. That's what the plane map said anyway when I arrived in Nairobi the other night.
So you're in Kenya for a week or two, doing a bit?
I'm in Kenya for a couple of weeks with work, yeah.
Well done, Shane. Thanks a lot indeed for joining us by Zoom today. And I know Shane would also join me in welcoming those from various parts of the world, including Kenya, who maybe listen to us on our podcast online at C&SI Inspirations. Just Google C&SI Inspirations, you'll find us there. And also our listeners on West Limerick 102 Local Radio, who join us each Sunday at 9 a.m, and that's repeated again at 11 p.m. We welcome our listeners who are housebound, lonely and struggling in some way, and our listeners who support us each week in prayer. Thank you so much indeed for that prayer. Our weekly podcast and programme includes notices about faith events, locally, nationally, or from time to time internationally. We include interviews and faith topics, inspirational music, and we reflect on the Sunday Gospel. You can contact us, so please do so by texting us on 087 466 8950. That's 087 466 8950. Outside of Ireland, +353 before that. Or you can email us at commentsinspirations@gmail.com. That's commentsinspirations@gmail.com. Listeners to West Limerick 102 Local Radio can leave a message for us at the station number 069 66200. Now, this being this part of the year, we decided, Shane, that we'd devote a podcast this week, most of our podcasts, to something we recorded back 10 years ago. Do you want to let the listeners know what we've done?
Yeah, exactly. So a couple of years ago, is it 10 years, John? God, it doesn't feel like that.
2015.
We were very fortunate to have an interview with Alice Taylor, that great writer from Cork. And Alice was very kind to come on with us and to share her thoughts around Halloween and November and All Holy Souls and the Month of the Dead and all the rest of it. So we decided this week that we would re-share that interview with people, which is also good timing, actually, as I noticed that Alice was actually interviewed last week in, I think it was the Farmer's Journal, Country Life magazine. So I'm assuming she must have a new book coming out for the Christmas season as well. But anyway, we're delighted. We said we'd share this with listeners again, as we think it's one of the nicer pieces that we have in the archive that we like to dig out and share with our listeners on the podcast and on the radio program this week.
So let's listen to Alice from 2015.
And welcome back to Sacred Space this morning on West Limerick 102 on this, the 8th of November. On the programme this morning, I'm joined by John Keeley and Anne in studio. And on the phone, all the way from West Cork, we're delighted to have Alice Taylor. Good morning, Alice.
Good morning.
How are you keeping?
Very well.
What's it like down in your neck of the woods? What has it been like for the last couple of days?
Well, changing weather, but we are having the most beautiful autumn. I know now we're into November and it's winter, but it's still autumn. I think it was because we had such a wet summer. Trees, shrubs, everything grew amazingly. There was an amazing growth. And now you see, we're in the Bandon Valley, from Bandon in the Shannon Kinsale. Total wood, both sides of the road, all the way along. The colours of the trees at the moment would make your breath stop. You go, ooh, they're magnificent this year. I think it's the most beautiful autumn we've had for years.
It sounds wonderful, I have to say. It absolutely sounds beautiful. And of course, as you said, it is kind of, we're just into the beginning of November. It's hard to believe how fast, the time is going. And of course, one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you this week, Alice, is of course, November is very much a month of memories for people, because for many people, of course, November is the month of the dead. It's when we remember our loved ones.
That's right. My mother never called it November. She always called it the month of the Holy Souls. And in a way, I suppose people visit graveyards more than they would normally. Our church here in the village now, we have the graveyard around the church, which I think in a way is lovely, because when you go to mass, you pass in, you pass your grave, and people keep the graves beautifully, and it's lovely. I think a graveyard is such a restful place to walk around, and you know, you when you see the different names and you remember them, and it's lovely. And I think a graveyard reflects a village or a town. I think a well-kept graveyard speaks volumes about a place and the respect people have for their dead. It's lovely to see the graveyards well cared for and the graves well looked after, and to see people visiting their graves. I think it tells a lot about a place.
It does, actually. I'd agree with you there. Actually, it just reminds me, actually, of a poem in one of your books. The book is called The Journey, and the poem is called The Men with Sighs. And I love it. It talks about, actually, keeping the graveyard. And there's a great line in it when they talk about the crack of the blade on stone brought forth blessings on the dead, which talks about, the cutting of the grass with sighs.
That's right. That was way back when we had, we used to do the graveyard maybe once every couple of months. Now it's maintained regularly. We have a voluntary group, and they come once a week, and it's done. But that time, it wasn't done regularly, and so then every couple of months we'd organise a team. When I say they brought sides, that will make you realise how far back it was. And bring sides, and these were farmers, countrymen, and it was lovely. I used to be there with them, and I loved it because they'd uncover a stone, and invariably they knew who was under that stone, and they were able to tell the stories about it.
Yeah.
And, in a sense, I can remember thinking at the time, well, how lovely this is. And when it was all finished, then, the dusk would be coming in and the moon would rise behind the church. And you think, well, what a beautiful scene.
And you have a lovely line at the end of it. It's the living giving dignity to the dead. And I think that's a wonderful way of describing it. And of course, like you said, November as the month of the Holy Souls, there's that great tradition in it, and the recalling of memory, I suppose, in some respects. What do you remember, I suppose, in particular? You mentioned your mother there, but is there anything else that you in particular remember about the traditions around November?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember these now, but there was a thing called the rounds. And you'd go into the church, you'd say, I think it's on Our Father, 6 Hail Marys and a Glory. I'm not 110% sure now that was it. But our secondary school was in the town, was beside the church. And we used to get time off to do the rounds. I mean, we were about 12, 14 or 15 at the time. Now, I don't know whether we were motivated by religious fervour or just
or the time out of the class.
But we did the rounds. And I remember at that time as well, there was a thing called High Mass for the dead. And we used to go down to the church, the choir, and it went on for a long time. There was the priest would sing out some invocation, and the choir would answer, and it was extremely solemn, much longer than an ordinary mass. It's there no longer now. We don't have that any longer in the church. I don't know what happened. It wound down anyway.
Yes, the old requiem masses, of course, were much longer.
That's what I was talking about. I couldn't think of it.
Particularly if they were singing, as you said, some of them more longer, like the Dies Irae and things like that. It's amazing how things have changed in that regard. I suppose, Alice, looking at it, I suppose, and the whole evocation of memory, because one of the great things I suppose we could say about your books, and I was actually looking at the list, and I hadn't actually realised how many of these you had actually written. Because I suppose most people would associate with you, of course, with School Through the Fields. And I was looking, and I can't believe that was published in 1988.
That's right.
It's, when you go back, and I'm just looking down to the list, and I'm thinking to myself, we have that one. You've Quenched the Lamp and The Village and Country Days and The Night Before Christmas. And then, of course, you took a break and you decided to write some fiction, so you went for The Women of the House.
Yeah.
And, of course, then there was a number of poetry books along there as well.
Yeah, and then I did The Parish.
Yes.
And, The Parish, I think, was it was a kind of a natural step along the way, because whereas the School Through the Fields looked back, the parish recorded a typical parish in today's Ireland. I think that's what I was trying to do there. And because, the way we think, this will never change, this is the way things are, but of course it will change. And the format of a parish as it is today, which is great because it's a scaffolding for a community. You have the church, you have the parish hall, And the whole thing still functions around the concept of a parish. And that's fierce important because it kind of holds the community together, and which is hugely important. You know, and I see here now that we'd have a few new housing estates in the village, and the church in a way is a great community link. You know, when they come and they meet people outside the church afterwards. So it serves, you know, it serves more than a religious purpose. And I don't know if you have it in Limerick, but we have here the stations. I'm not talking about the Stations of the Cross now.
The stations in the different houses.
The stations in the different houses. I think that's a lovely tradition because the neighbours gather, and especially if there's new houses built in that townland, they come in and they meet the neighbours and they pray together and they have their tea and they you know, it's a great social network as well, the stations, and I think they're serving a huge purpose.
It's an important point actually you raised, because of course we're living in a challenging time where maybe a parish might necessarily have its own resident priest anymore.
Yeah.
But of course, as you know, but it goes back to the point: the priest isn't the parish identifier. The parish identifies itself in terms of how it as a community comes together.
That's right. And so long, you see, for a long, long time, the parish was identified as the priest. But I suppose that was a misconception in a way, but that was the way it was. But most parishes now, you know, that had maybe 2 or 3 priests have only now 1, and they're worked to distraction point. I mean, they're trying to cope with so much. So the laity are coming on board. And you know what I think, you know, acceptance of the laity doing things. Now, we have this preconceived notion that the church are hesitant to come forward, and that's true in some ways. But the laity, I think, have a huge problem in accepting the laity. We are really conditioned, I suppose this is our history. We kind of think we need a priest for everything, but we can't have it anymore because he's not there. So the laity will have to accept the laity.
That's a very, very valid point, I suppose. We're kind of used to tugging the forelock a small bit.
Yeah, you see, we're kind of preconditioned. But you see, I mean, if you think back before in Ireland, when somebody died, they died at home, the wake was at home. They never saw a priest until they came to the church. Then the funeral parlours came on board and they roped in the priest. He had to be there, you know, he had to be there for the rosary, he had to be there for several bits, all other different bits and pieces. Whereas the people led the rosary, there was always someone, you know, a neighbour. So the people did a lot more in earlier times. That changed, but now I think we'll have to go back because it should be resting with the laity.
It's an important point. It's something I know John Lorraine picks up again and again in the program. Is this whole kind of taking responsibility for ourselves? We should still be wet from our baptism in many respects. It just doesn't happen as we're children, and that's the end of it. And I love that idea that Lorraine has from time to time when she's on the program. Yeah. But I suppose, Alice, one of the things actually that expression you used from your mother actually is a lovely one. November being the month of the
Holy Souls, and doesn't it conjure up a lovely image? And I think during November they're closest to us. You know, you're more conscious of your family members and your friends that are gone. I feel that anyway. We have here in the church and in the Shannon, we have you know, the adoration. Now we had one day in there's 2 churches. Well, 3 churches actually, up to Knockaville and in the Shannon, and on Wednesdays here we'd have the perpetual adoration all day, and you know, it's rotated. Everyone do their hours, maybe 2 or 3 in the prayer room at church. Yeah. And so it's there. But I love the hour because you go in and you meditate for an hour. There's just peace and quiet. Nobody talks. And there's something lovely about stillness. Just the stillness for an hour. And I was, yesterday it was on here, and I was up there for the hour. And I thought, there was a richness about it because it was November. And I kind of felt the Holy Souls are closer to us in November. Now, they're always close to us, but I think we're more conscious of it in November. Tis we lack the perception of the closeness. But in November, I think we are more conscious of them. We bring them closer to us.
Ourselves. We open ourselves up, if you like.
Mm-hmm. We do,
and it is something, because I've worked overseas, and one of the things that always strikes me is how we do funerals in Ireland.
Yes,
and particularly in rural Ireland.
Yeah.
Cities is slightly different, but particularly in contrast to our neighbours in the UK.
Oh yeah, they don't die at all there,
Yeah, and it's the whole sense that there's a kind of a gathering around, or a mehel almost to the dead.
Yeah, I think we do a great job on funerals. I mean, I think you can't ignore that, and in some cultures they almost try to do that. They treat it as a non-event. It isn't a non-event, and it has to be. And I think rituals get people through it.
Yes, and ritual, as you said now, a very important word there is the ritual of getting through it, and how and it's not just, we're not just talking about the rituals of prayer, but even the whole thing of people coming to sympathise. Yeah. Maybe neighbours helping to open the graves, although that's not as common as it once was.
No.
But it's those things. Everyone knows there's a process for dealing with.
There is, and people, and there's a habit here now. When there's a wake on, people bring, they cook and they bring cake and different things. The neighbours provide the food in the house, and there's something lovely about that. It's as if the whole community come in, and the family who are grieving, they don't have to do anything about catering for the funeral. The neighbours do it in the kitchen. And I think that's
I have to say now, I can associate that very personally. It was my own grandmother died in August, and I have to say a number of the neighbours came in, and they were great to help us out over the few days of the funeral. So they were absolutely mighty.
Yeah, I think that's a great custom.
Yeah,
it's as well as that, if the wake is in the house, people stand around and they talk about the person and they tell stories, and often the family hear things that they mightn't know, because older people who knew the person who died when they were much younger, and it's a great gathering and a great sort of a sustaining for the family. And I think that's a great process.
Now, as you said, it's a process, I suppose, of handling it. And in particular, I was very struck by your book, and the name of it escapes me right now. About
And Time Stood Still.
As Time Stood Still.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful book. Yeah. I have to say now, I read it. I was away when I got it, and I read it. And there was stories, and that you said was you shared your experiences of dealing with the deaths of different members and friends of the family.
Yeah.
And can you tell us what was your idea behind it, and the things that struck you as you were writing?
Well, I'll tell you now how that evolved. When I wrote The Parish, I felt, well, part of every parish is a funeral, and before I had written The Parish, my husband had died. He died quite suddenly, and I wrote about the whole, about it in The Parish, and a lot of people said to me after, that helped me, because when you're kind of bogged down in grief, there are times when you think, God, am I losing my mind? I'm absolutely, you get submerged in grief, and there are we need certain handrails to get us through, and I think that's what, when you read what somebody who has walked in the shoes has written, you think, oh yeah, this is okay, and so then when my publisher came to me after that, and he said, would you ever think of doing a book on bereavement? And I thought, oh my God, it would kill me. So I thought, after a while anyway, I thought, right, I will, because the funny thing about it, John, is that a lot of the books on bereavement are written by Americans and by other nationalities. Now, we Irish are very good at funerals, but not that many people have written books on bereavement. Now, Christy Kennelly, I remember, was the first one I ever read. He wrote a book called Sorry for Your Trouble, and he did it, did it so well. And so I thought, God, there's a kind of a shortage of books about how we deal with funerals and grief in Ireland. So I wrote it from, you see, I think in a way you have to have walked in the shoes, as I said, to be able to write it. And I had written about Gabriel's death, my husband's death, while I was still grieving. And I think then when somebody is reading that, you know instinctively whether it's being written from the heart or from the suffering of the person writing it. You know, Tolstoy says that you write best when blood drips off the end of the nib.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that a terrible concept?
Yeah, it conjures up, but we know what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think that's it. So I started when I was 6. I had a little brother, Connie. He died. He was 4, and a child's concept of death is it's amazing, like, you know. But I was amazed when I started to write it how much I remembered. How much I remembered of that, even though I was only 6. And then over the years, different deaths in the family, I went through them all, and my experience. And, you know, I kind of hoped, as I wrote it, that people read it would feel, well, she's been there, and I'm here now too. But I think the message I want to get through is that you will survive. You know, even though there are days, you know, you think, oh my God, will I ever ever be all right again? But you will, and you know, you only just have to keep going, and that's where friends and neighbours come in, and that's the one thing for funerals in Ireland. We're great to gather, we're great to be there, but let me tell you, it's the people in the months afterwards, the friend who calls in, the friend who writes the letter, the friend who lifts up the phone. It's the friends who were there in the terrible months after death. They're the people that help you. I remember after my husband dying, I was inside putting clothes into the washing machine one morning, and a couple of weeks after. And you know something? I felt like going to the washing machine with them. And the next time the door opened, and a great friend of mine came in, and she said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm terrible." And she said, "Come in. We'll make down the fire, and we'll sit down by the fire." And you see, she had buried her husband. He died of cancer a couple of months previously. She said to me, the one thing she said I learned, her husband died in December. Every morning, she said, I put on the fire. Because she said, you're cold into the marrow of your bone when you grieve, and you need warmth. So she said, every day I lit the fire, and I sat beside the fire whenever I got the chance. And then she said, as soon as the winter went and the fine weather came, I went into the garden, worked in the garden, and I worked as long as I could with the garden. And I actually found that there's great healing in the earth. And I couldn't explain it, but if you're feeling very, very bad and you go out and you start digging in the garden, something happens. There's healing. You get healed. After an hour or two, you're better. It's an extraordinary process. And I remember saying this to a friend of mine who was home from America. And you know, with the Americans do tests on everything. And I was saying, the earth is healing when you're grieving. And he said, do you know, he said, they have proved that in America. They have done tests on mice, apparently, and they found working with the earth gives people more stamina and calms them.
All right.
There's some bacterium in the earth that does that to people. And I say it's a proven fact. I didn't know anything about this theory, but I found digging the earth healed me. I felt I got better. And you know, I think going back, if you think of Ireland in earlier times, when times were tough and there was poverty and hardship, I think that time they went out, they ploughed the fields. Mm-hmm. And I think out there ploughing the fields, if you think about it, this is with horses, farmered out, up and down the field all day. I think out there in the solitude of the field, man, God, nature, they found God. They found their souls out there. It was meditation. It was walking meditation.
It was actually. That's a beautiful way of saying it, Alice. It was a form of walking meditation. And you know, Alice, if you were to, you know, to our listeners this morning now, particularly someone maybe that might have undergone a bereavement kind of in the last 12 months. And, this might be the first month of the Holy Souls.
Yeah.
And if you were to kind of, pull up the chair with them and have a cup of tea, what kind of would be the main piece of advice maybe that you would give them?
John, I actually think the best you can do is listen to them. Because, they need to talk it out. And what I really say is, be whatever way you are. There's no prescription. There's no recipe. There's no right way to be. Whatever way you are, be that way. Because grief is like a river. It's like a tide. And, you in the initial stages, you have to go with it. Because if you block a river, it will circumvent and come in another way. So go with it and just let it be. And after a while, you'll ease out of it. But I found that, I had tapes that I'd listened to. I'd walked. I went out in the garden, walked with it. Be very kind to yourself, because you have been, if you were after a big operation, you would be very careful. You'd look after yourself. After bereavement, you're wounded. And I remember my sister saying to me, when you're bereaved, you're bleeding inside. And you are bleeding inside. You might appear normal, but you're not. So I think you need, go for massages, go for an Indian head massage, go for everything that helps. Be very kind to yourself. Light a lavender candle. Lavender is very calming. Light a lavender candle. Sit by the fire, cosset yourself and be very kind to yourself, and avoid people that irritate you. You can at all.
Alice, what we'll do there, we'll just take a break now for a minute. We have to listen to another piece of music, and we'll come back to you then after the break. John?
Okay, thank you guys. So this bit of music now we'll go for is from Noel Henry's album, How Can I Keep From Singing? And this one's entitled The Song of Thanks. So let's hear this.
I can see now, as I walk this path of life, along with sunshine comes a little strife, and with it often comes a broken heart, and you feel like your whole world has come apart. And then from out the darkness comes a light that says I'm here to help you fight, a light that shines so brightly from above. If we only put our trust in His great love. Lord, You've opened up my eyes and now I see the wondrous gifts that You have given me. Like my health, my friends, my faith and family, and living in a country that is free. So help me, Lord, to realize and say a prayer of thanks for each and every day. For I know not what tomorrow has in store, and soon You may be knocking at my door. used to work long hours every day, and at times I thought I don't have time to pray or spend time with my family that I love and my children that I am so proud of. Like so many in my search for happiness, I never realized, as you might guess, that around me all the time were the real treasures, and material things and wealth are passing pleasures. Lord, you've opened up my eyes, and now I see the wondrous gifts that you have given me, like my health, my friends, my faith and family, and living in a country that is free. So help me, Lord, to realize and say a prayer of thanks for each and every day. For I know not what tomorrow has in store, and soon you may be knocking at my door.
Alice, just before the break, we were just reflecting, I suppose, on ways, I suppose, for people, particularly at this time of the year, who might be feeling a bit blue, I suppose, particularly as the evenings close in, and how to deal with things. And I was just looking there at a couple of your poems in the book, The Journey, and there was two in particular I was wondering if you'd be so kind maybe to read for us. And the first one is The Backyard. Could you tell us maybe a bit about this one?
Well, The Backyard, my husband died in November, and always before Christmas we had the tradition. I suppose I brought it from the farm where I grew up. There'd be big clean up for Christmas. Mm-hmm. So I went out in the backyard feeling, oh my God, so bad. And I thought, oh God, will I clean up the place, hose it down, tidy up the place? And I mean, I'm a pure stupid where water hoses is concerned. I mean, Gabriel always linked them up. And when I was tackling the water hoses, I thought, oh, Mother God, how can I manage this? And I came in and I wrote this poem. And the poem is called The Backyard. Yesterday, I washed the backyard with a mind full of throbbing pain. Scalding tears joined pipe water through hoses that you had connected. It is in the ordinary, everyday things that I miss you most. When all was clean and rearranged, I asked myself, why did I bother? But you were never one to sit and moan. You would have kept going, and so must I. Because savage grief must be worked through and grappled with hour by hour, so that one day your memory becomes a glorious tub of flowers.
I love that last line, that one day your memory will become a glorious tub of flowers, Alice. It's beautiful.
I have lots of tubs in the backyard, and I suppose I kind of thought, come spring, there'll be daffodils and tulips and primroses, and that would be a sort of a celebration of Gabriel rather than mourning. So, I think beautiful things, when you create beautiful things, you bring back beautiful memories.
You said to me before we came on air that the next poem is actually one of your favourites, I think.
Yeah.
And it's called Kindness.
Kindness. I think kindness is one of the most wonderful virtues in the world. I think kindness oils the wheels of life for everybody. If you're not feeling great and you meet somebody that's very kind, the world is a better place afterwards, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And this poem is called Kindness. The warmth of your kindness kept me in my mind. Its worth could not be measured. It had goodness undefined. You held out a caring hand when I was full of pain. You thawed my frozen being and made me live again. And
it's a beautiful piece, Alice.
Yeah, I think that's what kindness does to you. If you're in a frozen state, you meet somebody who's kind, and it thaws the ice inside in you.
Mm. I suppose one question, Alice, maybe just to see, I was listening recently to a podcast of the late John Moriarty, and it was an interview that he did with Joe Duffy on Liveline.
Yeah.
And it was around the time he was diagnosed as having cancer.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a wonderful, life-giving interview. And he spoke about the way that for him, he refused to describe himself as being terminally ill. He said to him, death is not a terminus, it's a doorway through.
Yeah.
Something greater.
Yeah. John Moriarty was an amazing man. Mm-hmm. I met him a few times. I was at one of his book launches, and he was extraordinary. His writings were amazing. I couldn't understand the half of it.
That makes two of us.
Oh my God! I mean, he is an amazing mind. Mm-hmm. But when you came on to the bits you could understand, they were treasures. And he had this lovely story, and I thought it was a wonderful story in one of his books, where he was at home at the home farm. And as you probably know, he was a professor in the university in Canada, and he said then he gave it all up because he kind of felt his brain was clogged, and then he spent the rest of his life unlearning what clogged his brain to get back to nature. But anyway, he went out on the home farm, and his sister was living there, and they were all gone to the Stations of the Cross, and he himself and his niece, there was a cow due to calf, and himself and his niece, she was a little girl about 6, and they went out to mind the cow calving, and the little girl said to him, she said, I came out of Mammy's tummy. And John said, oh yeah, and he said, and Mammy, oh, he said, Mammy came out of Nana's tummy. Mm-hmm. And John said, and Nana? Oh, she said, Nana was always there. What a figure Nana was in her world. And I tell that story actually in my latest book, which is called The Women.
Yes.
And in The Women, I pay tribute to they were amazing women, and there still are, that we hear nothing about. The farm women of Ireland, that, they reared the children, they ran the house, they ran the farmyard. They were the first of the working wives. They were extraordinary. And then you had the chapel woman. We had a chapel woman here. Her mother was a chapel woman. Her mother before that was a chapel woman. You had the nurse who delivered, it was all home births that time, who delivered the babies. Then you had the nuns. I feel sorry for the nuns now, they're getting fierce belting, because, the nuns did great things. They ran our hospitals at an amazing level of efficiency. They educated the country. They went out and they took education all over the world. And in this book, I do a chapter on a nun who went out on the missions, and I always wanted to know, how did they get on? There's a chapter about the poor Clares. I've always been hugely curious how the poor Clares survive.
Yeah.
And amazing. I found it an amazing experience to go in and talk to poor Clare and document how they lived. There's a story there about a woman from Achill Island, 94, lived all her life on Achill Island. They had an amazing life. If we thought we had poverty in the mainland, they had far more poverty. with all these women, unheralded, uncelebrated, but the life force and the backbone of Ireland.
And that book, Alice, is just newly published, is it?
It's just out. It just came out in October. It's called The Women. Because the women, that expression, my father would always say, my father had 5 daughters. And,
oh, God.
and he would always say, oh, my God, he used to say, pity the man that has 5 daughters. But anyway, he'd say, if somebody called and he was on his own, he'd say, the women are gone to town. Mm-hmm. And I have a niece married here to a farmer outside the village, and he would still say that, the women are gone. And it's a very rural term, the women. Mm-hmm. And it kind of signified the strength of women. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not kind of meant derogatorily at all.
No, oh God, no. It's anything but. Mm-hmm. It's a kind of a tribute because, I look back and think of my grandmother. My grandmother ran the farm when my grandfather died quite young, but she ran the farm, but she was a force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. There was extremely strong women laced throughout the community when they had really, they had no inheritance rights or things like that, but still, they kept going despite all the odds.
They did.
And they had great faith. We knelt down every night and we said the rosary. Mm-hmm. And I think the rosary has an amazing strength. If bad news comes into a house or there's a sudden death or anything and there's total confusion and everybody is bereft, if the people need, I'd experience of that here. If somebody says, we'll kneel down and we'll say the rosary, mm-hmm. It restores tranquility and calmness. And I think it's the Hail Mary, Holy Mary, that's a mantra. Mm-hmm. It calms the mind. So I think the rosary, it served a lot of purposes, and, when you think about it now, a lot of the practices of our childhood, we got awful snapped and sophisticated and we thought, for God's sake, that's all old-fashioned. But now I think we're having a second look, and what we decided was old-fashioned. Sure, it had decades of wisdom built into it. Yeah, like the rosary, the wakes. A lot of things were very well thought out. Mm-hmm. Even though we thought they weren't, but they were.
Alice, I'm afraid we're running out of time, and I have to say I'm very sorry that we are, because I could sit and talk to you for another hour.
Well,
we might have you back again on the programme at some stage.
Yeah. Well, I'd be delighted to come on any time.
Yes, it was wonderful having you on the programme this morning.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I have to say, and thank you very much for sharing with us your wisdom, particularly for people, in this year. And like you said, your new book is out. It's called The Women, and as Gabo used to say, available from all good bookshops. John, back to you.
Alice, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It was a pleasure having you on, and no doubt we'll have you on again. We're going for the final bit of music, and I think there's only one piece of music really that I can play. After listening to Alice there, really it was all about people. We need people so much in our lives. This one is from Mark Forrest, from his album Centre Stage, and this one is entitled People.
needing other children, and yet letting a grown-up's pride hide all the need inside, acting more like children than children. People, there are some very special people. They're the luckiest people in the world. With one person, one very special person, your soul says you have now your own. No more hunger and thirst, but first be a person who needs people. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world.
So welcome back again to the third part of Come and See Inspirations. My name is John Keeley, still joined by Shane Ambrose. And that was a lovely memory for all of us to be able to listen back to Alice Tyler as she shared those wonderful reflections and thoughts with us this week. So now it's part of our podcast where we read and reflect on the Sunday Gospel. Before that, we'll ask Shane, as usual, to pray this prayer before reading and reflecting on Scripture. Thanks, Shane.
Lord, we thank you for putting us in the presence of your word, which you inspired in your prophets. May we approach this word reverently, humbly, and attentively. May we not despise this word, but receive all it has to say to us. We know that our hearts are closed, often incapable of comprehending the simplicity of your word. Send your Spirit to us so that receiving the word in truth and simplicity, our lives may be transformed by it. Let us not be resistant, Lord. May your word penetrate us like a two-edged sword. May our hearts be open to it. Let not our eyes be closed and our minds wander. But may we give ourselves entirely to this listening. We ask this, Father, in union with Mary, who used to recite the Psalms, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that, Shane. So the Gospel for this week that we take it is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, verse 11 to 17. Jesus went to a town called Nain, accompanied by his disciples and a great number of people. When he was near the gates of the town, it happened that a dead man was being carried out for burial, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. When the Lord saw her, he felt sorry for her. "Do not cry," he said. Then he went up and put his hand on the bier, and the bearer stood still. And he said, "Young man, I tell you, get up." And the dead man sat up and began to talk. And Jesus gave him to his mother. Everyone was filled with awe and praised God, saying, "A great prophet has appeared among us. God has visited his people." And this opinion of him spread throughout Judea and all over the countryside. So that's the gospel that's presented for us today, Shane, on All Souls Day.
Yes, so obviously it is the gospel of the day, which is All Souls, as John said. So this weekend, of course, we have the lovely Triduum of All Hallows Eve, or Halloween, All Saints and All Souls. And we're facing in, of course, to the month of November, which, of course, in the Catholic tradition is the month of the Holy Souls, where we have this lovely tradition of remembering and praying for the dead, and asking for the intercession of those that have got to see the face of God, which is all the saints, not just the official canonized ones. And the whole idea, of course, is that we pray for each other as in what's called the communion of saints. Those, and for those here on earth, those in purgatory, and those in heaven as well. And the gospel that we had this week, John, is from Luke, and it's unique to Luke. The account of the widow of Naim and the rising of her son from the dead, it only occurs in Luke's gospel. And reflecting on it during the last couple of days, I wasn't quite sure where I was going to go with this. I think from a reflection point of view for the podcast this week, but I think for me the line that stood out is the one where he says, "Do not cry." When the Lord saw her, he felt sorry for her. "Do not cry," he said. And there's something so humane about that, because we have a widow woman here who has lost her only son. Now, widows and orphans were the lowest of the low in the society, because they had no one to protect them, they had no one to look after them, they had no one to defend them. And she had just lost her one support. which was her son. And there's no, calls for intercession here. There's no, someone standing and shouting at Jesus to do something about this. He responds from his humanity, I think is one way of describing it. And for me, this is a gospel which very much speaks to the humanity of Jesus. We often, we rightly understand and we profess as faith that Jesus was true God and true man. And sometimes, though, I suppose we kind of get caught with Jesus as God, and we kind of forget, well, Jesus is also human. And for me, this event was very much reflecting on that, and then asking ourselves, how do we respond to grief? And how do we accompany people through their times of sadness, which, of course, is a very appropriate conversation for this particular time of the year. Now, obviously, the second half of the gospel is very much looking at Jesus' response. He's raising the young lad from the dead, and the crowd's response to that. So we have, demonstration of God's intercession into this particular particular woman's life. And I suppose, obviously, we can't all raise people from the dead. But our question, I suppose, as we're reflecting on it this weekend, I suppose, is asking ourselves, how do we accompany each other through the process of grief and death? Because it is something that we will all experience in life at some stage. And I suppose for some of us, it's something that we have experienced numerous times. For many people, it's something which for some people, it's something they've never experienced. But I think, to be fair, and it's not blowing our own trumpet, but I think it's fair to say in West Limerick, people are very good for funerals. I think it's one thing I have taken with me wherever I have gone, that I can turn around and have reflected on the fact that people in West Limerick, we know what it is to accompany our neighbours in death. And the effort that people will make to go to funerals, but it's also an Irish thing, RIP.ie. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who was English and explaining to her, oh yeah, I'm just looking up RIP.ie I was checking a death notice. And she nearly wet herself laughing. She said, are you serious? I said, I am deadly serious. I said, this is one of the most important websites in the country. And she found it just fascinating. And it's that whole sense of, I suppose, from an Irish point of view, we respect death and dying, and we acknowledge the process of it. But the problem sometimes, I would say, is maybe we're a bit too quick. Our funerals are generally over like 3, 4, if a funeral goes on for 5 days, that's a long time. But that can happen if it falls on a weekend, or if there has to be post-mortem or something happening, or you're waiting for someone to come from abroad. But it's considered a long time for an Irish funeral. But the question that comes to me from this Sunday's gospel is, what happens after? Right? And how well do we accompany people afterwards? Because looking at the Sunday Gospel, you had the immediate effect of the resurrection of the boy and he being restored to his mother. But I often wonder, like with Jairus' daughter, with Lazarus, with this young lad, what was it like afterwards when the crowd had gone, and they had come back? What was it like? Because they obviously died a second time. They're not still around, But anyway, that's going off on a slight tangent, John. I suppose in terms of reflection for this Sunday's gospel, it's a gospel of humanity. It's a gospel of compassion. And if we put ourselves into it and ask ourselves, where is our humanity? Where is our compassion at moments of grief and death, and our accompaniment with people that are going through that process? And particularly as we enter into this month of November and the month of the Holy Souls.
Shane, thank you very much, Neil, for sharing that with us. For me, just a very quick thought when I was reading the Gospel, this story, it should really help us maybe to look around at our own situation and see two things. How alive we really are. Do we realise how alive we are? And I'm so grateful for that. But number two, let's also look around and see how many people need to be lifted up just today. Jesus lifted up the young man for his mother. How many people need to be lifted up and helped in our lives, where we are? Maybe we can think about that for the week and see what we can do in terms of allowing the gospel to speak with ourselves. In the meantime, we'll have to go for our final piece of music today. Thank you very much, dear listeners, for joining us, and Shane, for travelling all that distance over the airwaves, 8.5 miles, whatever it is. And we'll go out, and there's really only one piece of music I'd like to play this week. It's You Raise Me Up. But until next week, for myself and Shane, thanks for joining us. Have a good week, and let's think of each other as we go through the week. God bless now. Bye.
Bye, bye-bye.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burden be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. Shoulders, you raise me up to more than I can be. There is no life without its hunger. Each restless heart beats so imperfect. But when you come and I am filled with wonder, sometimes I think I glimpse eternity. You raise me up, I can stand on mountains. Stormy sea.